Welcome everybody, my name is Mr. Llama and today I am bringing you a PvP on Shakuras Plateau. This is going to be between the blue Protoss spawning down in the bottom left corner, Axel. Of course, he is Axel Toss, the Masters player as well as the caster. Pretty well known player. And up in the top right is our red Protoss player Dyne. He is also Masters, so it is going to be a Masters vs Masters game here. They have spawned cross positions here, and as I said, this is Shakuras Plateau, so I'd be very interested to see if fast expansions or something are kind of taken. I don't mean like immediate expansions, as I don't think I've seen anybody open with a Nexus first in PvP as they do in PvZ sometimes, but you have to remember that on Shakuras there is just this small ramp right here to defend, so this is fairly easy to defend. And if you expand fairly early, I could say you could get a little advantage right there. Just have some sentries for force fields. So maybe you open up in a like 3-gate robo into an expand, something along those lines. I'm not exactly sure of what players are doing these days for fast expand builds in PvP, but yeah, so I don't know, I guess we'll have to see. Both players right now just opening with that gate and gas, so doing the same sort of build right here. And you have to remember that in PvP or in any mirror matchup, everything is just so, every little detail matters. So even something like who was it? Stefano was talking about in ZVZ how whenever he spawns down in one of like the bottom left, let's say, his larvae are closer to the minerals, so he has an advantage. Or if he like spawns up here in the top right, his larva will be far away from the minerals, so he'll be like, oh, now I'm at a disadvantage and I have to make this up somehow. So it's just funny to see how those tiny little factors or details there can really affect the game. So both players throwing down their cybernetics core, and it looks like Axel opting for a later cybernetics core there. He did throw down that second pylon first, so he's going to go ahead and get a little economic advantage there. As we can see, he's already at 18 harvesters over his opponent's 16, and his opponent was, I believe, supply blocked for a few seconds there, so Axel getting that slight economic lead there, and this is good in the cross position, as by the time his opponent's units take to travel all the way across the map and get over here, Axel's units would be out in the same fashion there, or the same amount of time basically. So Axel doing good there, getting that economic lead. And let's see, yes, he's still holding it slightly. In the meantime, Dyne did have a probe in the base, and I wasn't sure if he was going to throw down a pylon right there, possibly go for some sort of fast warp gate. And if you can get a pylon in your opponent's base and they aren't doing a 4-gate as well, so if Axel was trying to throw down some other sort of tech and getting sentries out after this to try and delay it, there could be some serious issues right there, and he could lose the game. But Axel, being a smart Protoss, going to go ahead and scout out his entire base there. Meantime, we do see 3 gates coming down for our red Protoss Dyne, so we'll have to see what exactly else he is going to throw down there. He does have a lot of gas right now, and he's only making those stalkers, and here we go, he does have a forward pylon, so it looks like he's going to go for some sort of 3-gate aggression here. In the meantime, though, Axel as well throwing down those 3 gates, and Axel just doing everything a little bit slower, it appears, than his opponent. So I'm a little curious as to that. He doesn't really, he's lost that harvester lead that he had before. He's able to snipe that probe off, though. Huge gain right there if he can, because if he just takes out this pylon, focus down the pylon, if he can focus down that pylon, and I mean there's the pylon right back there, but without that probe he cannot keep bringing units in there to warp in. And uh-oh, here we go, the pylon has gone down, and he does have vision up here, so he will be able to warp in on the high ground if he does get this up. But no, Axel very smart, gonna go ahead and focus down that pylon. In the meantime, Dyne's stalker has taken a little bit of damage, but Dyne is in the base here, and he has 5 stalkers versus Axel's. There we go, so Axel now up to 5 stalkers and a zealot. He did lose that sentry there, so never fun. That is 100 gas investment. So a lot of gas you have to use on that, and all he did was he was able to get a force field off, so it did save him a little time. But now that that probe's gone, there cannot be more pylons warped in up here, which is big news for Dyne, as if Dyne could have got that pylon and those units, he could have come and like warped like 2 more pylons in up on this high ground, forced Axel to run around with all these stalkers, and then he could have been warping more units in right there. But instead he's forced to warp units in back here if he wants, and it doesn't even look like he's doing that. No, so he is just letting off his aggression. Looks like he's going to go ahead and contain Axel for a little bit, make Axel scared, make him worry that there's still some sort of pressure still coming. But in the meantime, both players are taking their robotics facilities. So Axel once again a little bit later on his robotics facility. So it appears Axel, while he does have the army advantage now, is going to be a tiny bit behind, I feel like, in tech and harvesters. Yes, so he's still just a little bit behind there, but you have to remember he does have that army lead now. And Axel possibly going to go ahead and do some sort of push here, setting up the initial that pylon right down there. So possibly going for some sort of warp ins, or it's having that for any scouting. And here we go. He's going to go ahead and scout out this pylon over here as well. In the meantime, though, Axel throwing down that robotics bay. So it looks like Axel's going to go ahead and gear up to get some Colossus out, try and get ahead in that Colossus lead. As PvP, he with the most Colossus winneth, and that is not always true, but it's fun to say. So having that Colossus lead though is a huge thing, as well as getting that extended thermal lance. I've seen many a game, especially by Axel, where he will be down in units, or down in Colossus even sometimes, but he'll have that thermal lance over his opponent because he did rush to that fast robotics bay, and he can just sit there and out micro his opponent's units in Colossus and deal enough damage to really get back into it. So have to see exactly what does happen. In the meantime, though, expansion's going down for both players, and it looks like they are pretty much dead even, just a couple seconds separating those. So both players getting the idea to go ahead and expand there. Axel not going to put any pressure, even though he does have that slight army advantage, I'd want to say. Yeah, he's got 4 zealots over his opponent, but his opponent does have an immortal. So Axel now with that Colossus coming out, also dropping a forge to get those +1 upgrades. We'll have to see if he does go for some sort of timing push with a +1, as it will be before his opponent, I believe, yes, before his opponent has any upgrades. So Axel has the Colossus lead, he has the army lead right now, just doesn't have that immortal, or 2 immortals actually. And if he can get a +1 on his opponent there, that would be huge right there, and that could be a game ender. So we will have to see exactly what does happen. In the meantime, there is transfer coming from both players, and both gases, of course, being taken before the expansion really does finish. So always smart if you are expanding. As any race, for the most part, I'd say, go ahead and throw up those gases if you feel safe with that expansion. If you're taking a really risky expansion, maybe don't. But if you feel safe, go ahead and throw up those gases so that right when you do that transfer, you can pop right into those gas, as gas is extremely especially in this matchup. Since you want to be pumping out those Colossus or those Immortals or Stalkers, anything like that, all these units are very gas intensive. And usually the person with the more Colossus and such is the person that does win. Plus you can get upgrades, of course, with those and all the fun stuff. So Axel very late on his extended thermal lance upgrade, and it's actually going to be behind his opponents. So I'm a little curious about that, but instead of getting that, he actually did get this forge up and is chrono boosting out, or not chrono boosting at the moment, but he did have a chrono out before, and is getting out that +1. So opting for the fast upgrade over the fast extended thermal lance, and it looks like both of them will be finishing up about the same time. So that could be gearing up for a nice little push, as he will have 2 Colossus. Usually players do like to push with 2 or 3 Colossus in their army. I'd say 3 is the average push number, but his opponent is getting his Colossus count up as well, and he does have a second Robo, so it looks like he is investing heavily into this Colossus tech, into this sort of army. And where is his army? He has his army located at the back of his base. And this is a pretty small army, I'd like to say. Just those sentries. I mean, there's not really much damage right there. Just those Immortals to hit on the Stalkers, and some Zealots do okay. But the, yeah, and here we go. We do see this push coming out. So as I was saying, we do have that extended thermal lance finishing up right now. The +1 is finishing, so there is the timing attack that is going to be hitting. Axel going to go ahead and clean up any little pylons here that he does see forward. There's this forward pylon over here and a pylon down here, so you will have to watch for that, see if any units are warped in. But in the meantime, Axel possibly losing a stalker. No, he's just drawing those stalkers out. He actually does lose that stalker though, but here we go. He might be pushing up into the ramp right now. And you have to remember that Dyne does have that ramp advantage. Plus he has those force fields, so the Colossus, to walk over those force fields, will have to go to the front of Axel's army, which is not a position that you want to be in when you have those Colossus. So right now it is only three Colossus. Here we go, the third Colossus finally meeting up for Axel. But you have to remember there is double Colossus production coming out of Dyne right now. This is going to be extremely difficult. And Axel going to go ahead and possibly get free kills here. It looks like he might pick off... he's just going to deal some damage to some Zealots right there. So sure, I'll take free Zealots anyways. And a force field goes down randomly. And terrible force fields by Dyne. So looks like he's a little bit scared there. And he's just throwing up some random force fields. In the meantime, Axel picking off units with his Colossus just for free here. So looks like Dyne overextending there with his Colossus a little bit. But they're just doing a little Colossus dance party right now. So Axel possibly going to pick off one of those Colossus. He does drop the shields on his, but there are 5 Colossus right now, so Axel does have to be careful as he is down in that count. A lot of Zealots have warped in for Dyne, and Axel possibly going to be backing off of this as he's not sure if he can deal with this, but Dyne's army does push out into the field, so Axel going to go to engage. He does pop the Guardian Shield. The Colossus are tearing away, though, at those Immortals. Are going to take out both of those Immortals. Will one of those Immortals take out 2 Colossus, maybe 3? So, let's see, 2 Colossus do go down. Yes, the Immortals do go down. Axel's Zealots are dealing a ton of damage, and Axel, with all of those Stalkers, able to deal so much damage as the Immortals were not able to really do that much, and poor Dyne's Colossus were not able... I want to go back and watch that. I feel like I missed so much. I was watching all this Colossus, and then all of a sudden, there was no army left for Dyne. So, wow, Axel with a huge engagement right there. He did have the nice concave. So let's go ahead and watch this again, because that was just a beautiful fight. So you have to admire Axel for his persistent poking away there. He was able to pick off a couple Stalkers and a couple Zealots, I believe, in that engagement right there. And Axel, oh, here we go. He does have that +1 finished. So that is a huge difference right there, as Axel has the 1-1 versus his opponent 0-0. So upgrades, huge, as you can see from this battle. It is a completely even supply. 48 harvesters for each player, 134 supply for each player. So they are exactly even in army, exactly even in what am I trying to say? In units to fight with. And this comes down to upgrades and concave and guardian shield. So let's see exactly what does happen here. So Axel's Stalker able to do a lot of damage against all of these Zealots over here. In the meantime, the Colossus are just focusing down Axel's Colossus, but Axel able to leave them away. So that was the big difference right there, is Dyne's Colossus just chased after Axel's the entire time. And so Axel's Stalkers and Zealots were able to sit there and just focus down all of the ground army for Dyne. And even though Dyne still had like 4 Colossus at the end of that fight, Axel able to just simply clean that up, as he still had a ton of Stalkers left and a few of his own Colossus, or a couple of them there. So well played by Axel. The upgrades huge right there, and that +1 almost finishing for Dyne, but just not in time. And yeah, GG. MrLlama out.